Wyoming Territory, 1874. The wind carried dust across the dry road winding through Laramie, and by the time the wagon stopped outside the saloon, the girl inside had already been sold. Sierra Vaughn didn't cry. She sat stiff-backed, hands folded in her lap, chin high like her father used to tell her when trouble came close. He had died 3 weeks ago, slumped over the porch of their homestead with his hand still clutching the rifle. Fever took him fast. And now, her uncle by blood but nothing else had pocketed $500 from a man with silver rings and a dead look in his eyes. "She's yours now," her uncle had said without meeting her eyes. "Do what you want. She's 18. Ain't my problem." The man who bought her, Elias Trent, owned 3 saloons between Laramie and Cheyenne. Sierra had seen his kind before. She knew what he bought girls for. She stepped down from the wagon carefully, boots dusty, braid tight down her back. She wore her mother's cross under her dress, the chain thin and worn, but it gave her strength. She would not scream. She would not beg. The wooden doors to the saloon creaked open. The air inside was thick with pipe smoke and sweat. Music from a piano clanked out of tune in the corner. Elias led her through, and she kept her gaze on the floorboards. He shoved her toward the stairs. That's when she saw him. He was sitting near the back, alone, a half-empty mug in front of him and a rifle leaned against the wall by his chair. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and a scar that ran from his left temple to the edge of his jaw. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. His hat was tipped back just enough to show a tangle of brown hair. Elias grabbed her arm again. "Upstairs." She yanked back. Elias narrowed his eyes. "You think I paid just to have you stand there?" The man stood. Sierra didn't even realize she was watching him until he spoke. "No one owns her," he said. Elias turned, surprised. "You drunk, cowboy?" The man didn't answer. He stepped forward calm like he had done this before. His boots barely made a sound. "You heard me," he said. "No one owns her now." Sierra's heart thudded. Elias let go of her arm but sneered. "She ain't yours either." The man looked straight at Sierra. "She ain't anyone's. She walks out of here if she wants to." Elias looked between them, then spat on the floor. "Fine. I got my money. She ain't worth the trouble." He stormed off, pushing past patrons to yell at someone behind the bar. The man turned to Sierra. "You all right?" His voice was low, steady. She nodded once. "Yes. I'm Yates O'Malley," he said. "You got a place to go?" "My father died," she said. I don't have anywhere." He didn't reach for her. He just nodded. "All right, I got a ranch about 10 miles west. You can ride with me if you want. I will not touch you." "You have my word." She studied him. His hands were steady. His voice didn't shake. He was calm in a way that made her feel like she could breathe again. "I'll come with you," she said. Outside, the sun had started to set behind the hills, casting gold over the dry land. He led her to a horse, his mare, solid and chestnut-colored. He offered his hand to help her up. She took it. They rode out of town without looking back. By nightfall, they had made camp near a creek. He built the fire while she gathered stones to circle it. He gave her a blanket and took the other side of the flames. "You can sleep easy," he said. "I keep watch first." She looked at him across the firelight. "Why did you help me?" He hesitated. Then, "My sister was taken when I was a boy. No one helped her. I swore if I ever saw someone in her place, I would not look away." Sierra looked down at her hands, the calluses from years of ranch work beside her father still rough on her skin. "Thank you," she whispered. They did not speak again that night, but she slept, for the first time in days, without fear. The next morning they rode the last stretch to his ranch. It sat nestled between a ridge and a grove of pines, a small house with smoke curling from the chimney. The barn leaned a little, but it was solid. 2 horses grazed out front. "I have work here," Yates said. "You can help if you want, or you can rest. No one will ask anything of you." "I want to work," she said immediately. "I do not want to be useless." He looked at her and nodded once. "All right." Over the next days they fell into rhythm. She helped with the chickens, with feeding, with checking fences. He showed her how to patch saddle leather and where to watch for coyotes near the sheep. They worked side by side. He never tried to touch her. He never looked at her like Elias had. But he looked, and she saw it. The way his eyes softened when she laughed. The way he paused when she brushed dust from her skirts. And she found herself watching him, too. The way he leaned against a fence post, arms crossed, eyes scanning the hills. The way he spoke gently to the horses, even the mean ones. One evening, after another long day mending the barn roof, Sierra sat on the porch steps, her braid undone, hair falling loose over her shoulders. Yates joined her, a tin cup in his hand. "I heard there will be frost soon," he said. She nodded. "I can help with the winter prep. I know how. I believe you." They sat in silence a few minutes. Then she looked at him. "Why are you alone, Yates?" He stared into the distance. "I was not always. I lost someone once. Thought maybe I was not meant for anything more. And now," he turned to her. "Now I think maybe I was just waiting for the right heart to find mine." Her breath caught. He stood then. "Good night, Sierra." She watched him walk into the house, and her heart was not quiet anymore. Pounded. She dreamed of his hands that night. Not rough, not cruel, just steady, just him. And for the first time since her father died, Sierra woke up with hope. The first frost came hard, laying a thin white hush across the ridge behind the barn. Sierra rose before dawn, her breath misting in the still air as she pulled on her coat and stepped into the yard. The chickens huddled silent in their roosts, and the horses stamped quietly in the corral. She moved with practiced rhythm, checking troughs, breaking ice with a chunk of iron, her hands red and raw by the time the sky warmed to pale gold. Yates came out with 2 steaming mugs. He offered her one without a word, and they drank beside the fence where the sun reached first. She noticed he hadn't shaved in a few days, and the stubble along his jaw was flecked with frost. "You ever seen a winter out this far?" he asked. She shook her head. "Only in Nebraska. Snow came thick there, but the wind didn't bite like it does here." He nodded. "It'll come fast now. We'll need to bring the herd down from the high pasture soon." "I can help with that," she said, cradling the mug in her hands. "I know you can." They didn't speak again until the frost had melted from the fence posts. Later that day, while she patched a saddle strap inside the tack shed, Yates returned from town with supplies. She caught the scent of kerosene and wool as he passed her, arms full of wrapped parcels. "I picked up extra canvas," he said, setting it down on the workbench. "Thought we might line the loft with it. Keep the worst of the cold out." She glanced at him, her needle paused mid-stitch. "You want me to sleep in the loft this winter?" "No," he said, steady. "I want you warm. I meant for both of us. There's more room up there than you think." She didn't answer right away. The needle slipped through leather, and she tied off the thread before speaking. "You lived up there alone? Since spring. And before that?" He leaned against the doorframe. "I bunked in the house when my brother worked this place. He left 2 years ago. Headed south. Never wrote." She folded the saddle blanket carefully. "You don't talk much about your family. There's not much left to say." She stood then, brushing dust from her sleeves. "You ever think of leaving too?" "I did once," he said. "But I stayed." Maybe I was waiting on something to be worth staying for. Sierra didn't look at him, but her hands stilled on the blanket. And now? He didn't answer, but the silence between them felt heavier than before. That night, as they ate salted pork and beans by the hearth, Sierra asked, "How did you come by this land?" "My father traded for it when I was a boy. 50 head of cattle and his wedding watch." "Was he kind?" Yates blinked, then nodded. "To my ma, and to us when he could be. He drank, but he never raised a hand." She set down her tin plate. "My father never lied, even when it would have been easier." They stared into the fire, its light flickering over the plank walls. The storm shutters rattled once, then settled. "Do you believe people can change?" she asked. "I think people carry their past like a rock in their boot," he said. "They can walk a long way with it, but it still rubs." She gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. "Then maybe I just need better boots." He smiled then, faint but real. "Maybe. Or someone to sit with you while you take the rock out." The fire popped, and she looked at him fully for the first time all day. His face was unreadable, but his eyes never left hers. She stood. "I'll bring in more kindling." He rose too. "I already stacked some by the porch. I'll check the door latch then." "Wind's strong tonight." He didn't stop her, but as she passed him, their shoulders brushed. He didn't move away. She stepped into the chill and drew her shawl tighter. The stars were out, sharp and close, and the ground crunched beneath her boots. She didn't check the latch right away. Instead, she stood in the doorway, watching her own breath rise. When she came back inside, Yates was still standing by the fire, arms crossed, gaze low. She walked past him toward the ladder that led to the loft. At the base, she paused. "I've never shared a roof with someone I trusted," she said. He turned. "Do you trust me?" "I'm starting to." He nodded once. "Then I'll take the floor tonight, until you're sure." She climbed the ladder without answering, but when she reached the top, she laid out both blankets side by side. She didn't call down to him. She didn't have to. Moments later, she heard his boots on the rungs. They didn't speak again that night, but the wind didn't sound quite so cruel with him beside her. By mid-November, the wind turned meaner, and the creek that ran along the edge of the property slowed under a glaze of ice. Yates spent most of his daylight hours hauling winter feed from the shed to the barn and checking the fencing along the west slope where elk sometimes wandered too near. Sierra managed the smokehouse, hung strips of venison to cure, and boiled lard down to seal the jars that lined the pantry shelves. Every task was done quiet, every motion sure. They had not slept apart since the first night in the loft. She had begun to leave her shawl on the peg beside his coat. He had started waiting with his coffee until she came down the ladder in the morning. One evening, after supper, he set a carved wooden box on the table between them. The fire behind him cast a long shadow across the floor. "I made this for you," he said. Sierra opened the lid. Inside lay a comb, smooth and pale, whittled from bone, its teeth wide and even. "I noticed your braid pulls at the scalp sometimes," he added. "Figured this might be gentler." She ran her thumb along the edge, not speaking at first. "My mother had one like this," she said finally. "She kept it wrapped in linen. Said some things deserve care." Yates sat back slightly, watching her with a kind of careful patience that had replaced his earlier reserve. "She sounds like she was a good woman." She was. Before the sickness took her, she used to sing while she canned peaches. Not loud, just under her breath, like she was humming to God. Sierra closed the box gently and looked up at him. "You think it's strange? A comb making me feel steadier than anything has in months?" "No," he said. "I think it means you remember where you came from." The next morning, while he saddled the bay mare to ride out and check the irrigation ditch. She came to his side with a wrapped biscuit and a thick piece of smoked ham tied in cloth. "I know you'll be gone past midday," she said. "You forget to eat when you're out longer." He blinked, then tucked the bundle into his saddlebag. "I won't be late," he said. "River crossing's half frozen, so I won't linger." She nodded, then reached out and pulled his coat collar closed against his neck with 2 fingers. He didn't speak. Not then. When he returned before dusk, she was kneeling by the hearth, her hair loose, cheeks flushed from the heat. A pot of stew simmered behind her. He hung his coat, then sat cross-legged beside her. "I found rabbit tracks near the far fence," he said. "They're burrowing close in. We'll have to watch the vegetables come spring." She stirred the pot, then glanced at him. "I've been thinking about Anna." He frowned. "Who's Anna?" "The girl Elias wanted me to replace. She ran off last winter. Didn't get far. I heard the others whisper her name. They said she froze before she reached the next town." Yates shifted. "What made you think of her now?" "Because I'm warm," she said. "And I'm fed. And I'm not scared anymore. And I think that's more than she ever felt." He didn't answer, but his hand reached toward hers where it rested on her knee. He didn't take it, just let his fingers touch lightly. "Do you want to go back?" he asked. "East, I mean. Maybe there's family or someone who—" "There's no one," she said. "There won't ever be again." He nodded slowly, his thumb brushing the back of her hand once before pulling away. Sierra leaned back until her shoulder touched the wall behind them. Her voice was quieter now. "I think I'm falling in love with this place." Her eyes met his. "And with you." She didn't ask for a response. She didn't need to. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small piece of folded cloth. Inside it rested a thin silver ring, shaped simply, with a line etched around the middle. "I carried this for years," he said. "It was my mother's. I didn't know who it was for until now." She looked at the ring, then at him. "I don't want to be beholden to anyone," she whispered. "You won't be," he said. "You'd be choosing it, just like I would." Sierra reached out, took the ring, and slid it onto her left hand. It fit snug, the metal cool against her skin. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. But the way he looked at her, steady and sure, it felt like a promise wrapped in silence. Outside, the wind pressed against the shutters. Inside, the stew bubbled gently, and 2 hearts, for the first time in a long time, sat unguarded. By late November, the snow came. Not much at first, just a dusting that settled into the grooves of the wagon ruts and softened the slope behind the barn, but enough to change how sound moved across the property. The wind no longer whistled. It whispered low and close, as if the land had drawn itself inward and was waiting. Yates came in from chopping wood with his coat stiff from the cold and his shoulders tight with strain. Sierra met him at the door, a wool cloth in hand. She took his gloves without a word and hung them by the stove, then unbuttoned his coat as steam rose off his shoulders. "You've been out since before first light," she said. "You should have let me take a turn." "I needed the quiet," he answered, voice rough from the air. "It's easier to think when the world's frozen solid." She poured hot water into a basin and set it on the table. "Then you've had your fill of thinking. Come wash." He did, dipping his hands into the warmth. His knuckles scraped and reddened. She sat across from him, a piece of muslin on her lap, needle moving in small, neat stitches. "Is that new?" he asked, nodding at the fabric. "I found cloth in the trunk behind the stove. Checked for moths. It's clean." She paused, then met his eyes. "I'm making curtains. For the loft window." Yates dried his hands slowly. "You planning on making this place more permanent?" "I already have." He didn't speak for a moment. Then, I've been thinking about the North Slope. She raised an eyebrow. What about it? If we dig a trench come spring, we can run meltwater to the lower field. Might get barley to grow if we're lucky. Sierra smiled faintly. You thinking of turning this into more than a cattle ranch? I'm thinking of planting something that stays in the ground. She set her sewing down. I'd like to see barley stretch up over that hill. Give the wind something to run through besides fences. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You ever tended a field? No, she said, but I've watched things grow. I know how to wait. That night, they slept with the stove banked low and a thick quilt pulled to their chins. The loft window rattled once, then held still. Yates lay on his side, facing her, his hand resting just beside hers but not touching. The space between them had grown smaller with each passing week, though neither had spoken on it outright. In the dark, Sierra whispered, Do you ever feel like you're waiting on something you can't name? Yates didn't answer immediately. His breath moved steady, warm against the cold. I used to, he said, but not anymore. She shifted, her hand closing the distance between them, fingers brushing the back of his. I think I'm ready, she said. He curled his fingers around hers, slow and sure. Then I am too. They didn't speak again, but the silence had changed. It wasn't the hush of grief or caution, it was the quiet of something new taking root. The next morning, Sierra stepped outside while Yates broke ice from the trough. She held the curtains in one hand, folded and finished. The kitchen window caught the sunrise, and she stood there a moment, letting the light strike her face. I'll hang them today, she said as he approached. He wiped his brow with a sleeve. They'll look good there. They'll make it feel like a home. Yates didn't look away from her. It already does. She blushed, but didn't turn from him. I want to build something here, not just stay. Build. Then we'll do that. He reached for her hand. Together. She nodded, and he leaned down not fast, not bold, and kissed her, slow and deliberate, like he had waited for the right moment and found it. When he pulled back, she didn't let go of his coat. Come inside, she said. I'm not finished sewing. He followed her in, and the door closed behind them, the wind shut out for good. The snow deepened through December, drifting in quiet along the fence lines and piling soft against the eaves. The roads into Laramie turned near impassable, but they had no need to travel. The larder was full, the animals wintered in the lower pasture, and the chimney smoke rose steady each day. Inside, the days slowed, but they filled the quiet with work and with each other. One morning, Yates came down from the loft carrying a folded paper, edges creased and worn. I've been meaning to show you this, he said, setting it on the table beside her sewing. It's the deed to the land. My father had it written proper, with boundaries marked in ink. Sierra traced the lines with one finger. You trust me with this? I trust you with everything. She let the words settle, then looked up. What would you say to adding my name to it? He didn't hesitate. I'd say it's about time. The next thaw wasn't due for weeks, but they began preparing the documents anyway. Yates wrote to a friend of his father's, a retired justice living near Rawlins, asking if he'd ride out and witness the papers when the road cleared. Sierra sealed the envelope with wax, then pressed her thumb into the still warm seal. That evening, she gathered the last of the beeswax candles, setting them near the stove to soften for remolding. Yates watched from the corner, rolling a length of twine between his fingers. You ever think about children? He asked. She stilled, surprised. I do, she said slowly. Not because I feel lacking, but because I wonder what a life built from peace might look like, passed down. He nodded once. We'd raise them to know work, but not fear, and to understand that strength doesn't mean silence. His gaze lingered on her. You'd be a good mother. I'd try to be better than what I lost. They left the question open between them, not rushed, not heavy, but acknowledged. That night, they slept with the window cracked just enough to hear the wind threading through the pines. His arm rested across her waist, and she didn't wake once. By the time the snow began to recede and the first patches of earth showed through, the justice had arrived. He came on a mule, bundled thick with wool and bearing a flask of rye in one pocket. Yates introduced him plainly. "This is Mr. Caro. He fought with my father in the war." Caro tipped his hat to Sierra. "You're the one steadying this place now, I hear." She nodded. "We're steadying it together." They signed the papers beside the kitchen window, the sun warm through the glass. Caro added his name in looping script, then passed the quill back. Yates turned to her. "You're part of this land now, not just by name." "I already was," she said. "But now it's written." Caro left by evening, carrying a bundle of smoked meat and a letter for the county clerk. As his mule disappeared down the trail, Yates wrapped his arm around Sierra's shoulders and kissed her temple. "We'll plant barley in April," he said. "And beans behind the shed," she added. He looked down at her hand, the silver ring still bright against her skin. "I want to take vows with you, not just in front of a paper, in front of God." She leaned into him, her voice quiet. "Then let's do it with the spring thaw. When the world's beginning again." They married under the cottonwoods above the creek, just as the first green shoots broke through the soil. No preacher came. Yates read from his mother's Bible, and Sierra answered with words of her own. They spoke promises into the wind, and the wind carried them true. They built a cradle from pine, though no child had yet come. They planted barley, and it rose strong. They strung a line of cotton curtains through the kitchen, each sewn by Sierra's hand. They danced once, in the grass behind the barn. No music but the sound of frogs waking up in the creek bed. In the years that followed, the land held firm beneath their feet. A son came first, then a daughter with her mother's eyes. They grew strong on milk and stories, on fence posts and creek water. Yates showed them how to mend tack, how to smell a storm before it came. Sierra taught them how to be still, how to listen when someone spoke from the heart. They never left the land. They didn't need to. The house grew in small ways: a second room, a new stoop, a rope swing hung from the cottonwood. But the soul of it stayed. And always, there was the memory of that first fire, and the man who stood between her and a life she hadn't chosen. Always the woman who reached back when he offered her freedom and took his hand. The land endured. So did they, together always.